everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we are going to be talking about Petite Fitness Reddit. Reddit is equal parts an incredible place to learn and converse with others while also being a cesspool of trash. You get it, right? Recently I came across a subreddit called Petite Fitness. So I was curious, I took a poke around and I realized that there is a plethora of women encouraging each other to eat as little as possible so they can become as small as possible. And I actually get questions a lot about being petite because I'm only 5'1", and how to train differently as a small person and also how it affects us nutritionally. Spoiler alert, it doesn't really affect that much. I don't really train any differently than someone who would have the same exact goals as me who would be 6'1". But anyway, in today's video, we're gonna take a scroll through 3 different posts that I found and we're gonna debunk a few myths around petite fitness. So our first topic today, people get so pressed when they hear my daily calorie goal is 1,200. If you've never been 5'2", just say that. I don't have an eating disorder. I've just eaten 1,800 calories a day for long enough to know that it makes me fat, LOL. Okay, let me start out by saying I'm 5'1", and when I was eating 1,200 calories at some point in my life, I had a problem. I'm not saying that this person has a problem or an eating disorder. That's out of my scope of practice. It's also inappropriate to insinuate that. What this person is insinuating is that everyone petite, so 5'2" in her case and under, 1,200 calories is normal. So just looking at the post, she says that when she was eating 1,800 calories, she was gaining weight. 1,800 to 1,200, that's a pretty severe jump. That's 600 calories. So while 1,800 might be her surplus, 1,600 or 1,500 might be her maintenance. You get what I'm saying? Now, the really big thing that people kind of come back with quickly when they hear 1,200 calories a day is that 1,200 calories a day is what's recommended for a toddler. And that's not true. But I always try to look at something as like, okay, even if it's true, is that helpful, actionable advice, right? Because what does someone do with that? They just start eating more, they don't have any habits or any skills around it, and then they will probably gain more weight. So I don't think saying that and leaving that and like walking away is helpful in any way. So first of all, let's say that this person is eating 1,200 calories a day and they are achieving their goals, which seems like maybe it's maintenance or weight loss. And that's perfectly plausible. Everyone has a different metabolic rate. To really quickly clarify what that means, your metabolic rate is the energy that you use or the calories you use to literally just live. If I laid down on this bench and did not move for an entire 24 hours, that is my metabolic rate. It is what keeps our organs functioning. It's what keeps us breathing. It's what literally keeps us alive. Everything else outside of that is additional energy expenditure, okay? So let's say that this person has a really low metabolic rate. The first thing that I would recommend is that maybe a weight loss goal, if that's what this person's goal is, isn't necessarily the best use of our time right now. What I would want to focus on would be getting that metabolic rate up a little bit more. Looking at our nutritional habits, so what types of foods are we eating? Looking at our sleep, are we getting 7 to 9 quality hours of sleep each night consistently? Looking at our stress. Stress is going to be a huge impact on your metabolic rate, and maybe implementing some different tactics and habits to mitigate that stress. Because obviously stress is a part of life. We have work, we have kids. I mean, I don't, but I know those are stressful. So there's only so much we can do to mitigate stress, but if we can have some things in place, I think I have a video about it. I'll pop it up here. If not, my bad. If we can have some sort of habits around our stress of daily life, that's going to be really helpful. Are we moving throughout the day? You know, this isn't necessarily going to directly affect our metabolic rate, but it is going to affect our other energy expenditure, which is our NEAT or our non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is essentially just how much you move throughout your day outside of your formal exercise. And then finally, of course, we have our formal exercise. Are you picking up and putting down heavy things 2 to 3 times a week? That's going to help not only support your hormonal health, which is a huge part of your metabolic rate, but it's also going to build some lean muscle mass on the body. And even though it's not a huge amount, muscle mass does take more energy at rest to preserve than fat mass. So every little bit helps, especially when we're talking about someone in a smaller frame who is used to eating 1,200 calories a day. If we can start to bump that up to, 1,250, 1350, that's going to be ideal. So that's the first half of this. The other part of this that I just have to play devil's advocate on as someone who has worked with people on the nutritional side, when I hear that someone's eating 1,200 calories a day and maybe the issue around that is like, oh, but they still can't lose weight or whatever their complaint is with that, or they can't go over that without gaining weight, I always question, how consistent are you with the 1,200? Are you really precisely tracking? Because tracking is hard. I found that a lot of people would forget to count their coffee creamer, forget to count the little bites they're eating when they're cooking, forget to count the little snack that they had at the end of the night. Or on the flip side, are you restricting so much during the week to save up for your weekend, and then you're actually ending up with the average of it all hitting your maintenance or a surplus? I have been there. I have much better habits now. So it's just something to think about. We will not be reading any of the comments under these posts because it is truly a cesspool of disordered advice, and I would rather not spread that on the internet because I do not think that is helpful. Instead, we're going to provide some actionable steps, some actionable advice, and bust these myths. So let's look at post number 2. How many carbs is too much for us petites? Hi all, I just had a question on macros. I don't usually track my macros much and just try to be as balanced as possible, but recently I had downloaded an app and tracked macros out of curiosity. Now this font is so small, I have to turn my phone. Does this mean I'm getting old? I realized that I had been eating upwards of 175 grams of carbs, which makes up almost 61% of my daily calories. I'm quite worried that I'm eating too many carbs in this case. I'm female, 18 years old, 148 centimeters, and relatively sedentary besides a daily 15K walk that honestly doesn't burn anything because of how short I am, LOL. Is this too much? Should I cut down on my carb intake? My macro intake for that day has been 175 carbs, 64.7 protein, 16.2 fat. I'm assuming those are all in grams. Okay, there's a lot of information here. Personally, I have not tracked in such a long time, so I truly do not remember even what my percentage breakdown is during the day. I also have to say I didn't ever pay that much attention to it. Last time I tracked was in November of 2023. I'm not gonna share these numbers exactly with you because I don't find that that's helpful, especially for comparison. I find that a lot of the Petite Fitness Reddit posts are all about comparison, and I just don't think that that's super helpful. But it seems like my carbs were about 40 to 60% of my total daily intake, depending on the day. And she said that hers were 61%. So that's about where mine was. You know, the one thing that I'm missing from this post, I don't know what this person's goal is. Is it just health? You know, it's confusing because, what does she say? She talks about a daily 15,000 step walk that doesn't burn anything because of how short she is. We'll get to that in a second. So it does make it sound like she has a weight loss goal. If that's the case, honestly, it doesn't matter what your percentage of each macronutrient is. It really does just come down to your calorie intake. I have a number of videos on calorie deficits and what that actually means. So if you want to know more about that, you can click on those videos. But essentially, the basic breakdown is that you just need to be taking in less energy than you are expending. And by energy, I mean calories. So that is how we measure energy in the body. Now, I will say her protein is pretty low and her fat is really low. I want to make sure we're all on the same page of why each of these macronutrients is vitally important. I know with different trends in fitness, different macronutrients have been demonized or praised, and they're all equally important for different reasons. It doesn't mean that you need to be eating the same amount of each during the day. That's also going to depend on how it makes your body feel, what your goals are, plethora of things, but let's kind of break it down. Carbs, first of all, carbs are going to be your body's main and preferred source of energy. Carbohydrates are essentially broken down into glucose or sugar, and it's used for energy. We have complex carbs, we have simple carbs. Complex carbs typically have more fiber, so they're a little bit harder for the body to break down, so it's more of a sustained energy. Simple carbs or quick carbs are going to be things that are very basic, so they break down really quickly. Think something like white rice. One is not better than the other. They have different benefits. They have different nutritional components. And if you want to get really specific with your training or with your body composition, you can definitely modify how much of and when you're eating those things. Fat obviously has a lot of benefits, but the main thing that I always think of is that it's going to support you on the cellular level. So it's going to be really important for your hormonal health, for your cellular health. If we don't have enough fat in the body, those things are going to suffer. And then of course, protein. I'm sure we hear all about protein, but this is going to not only help maintain, but grow our muscle mass if that's our goal. So if she is concerned about the ratio from a weight loss perspective, there's a few different things we can talk about here. If she's finding that she is super hungry during the day, I would look at the types of carbs that she's having. Is she getting more carbs that are simple? Is she getting more carbs with more fiber to slow the absorption? Her protein is definitely pretty low, even for someone who is petite. So especially if she is dealing with satiety, like if she's finding that she's pretty hungry during the day, I would up the protein because it's going to be more satiating. And then honestly, just from a enjoyment and a health perspective, I would up her fats a little bit. So really my concern here in addressing this isn't, oh, your carbs are too high. Me addressing it is, number one, what's your goal? And number two, we're a little deficient in these other things for our health. I also have to mention that she said she's sedentary, but she takes a 15,000 step walk a day. That's not sedentary. There was a huge meta-analysis that came out, I think 2 years ago, which basically pulled from thousands of different studies. And we've learned that to support our long-term health best, we want to hit between 7,000 to 8,000 steps on average every day. The 10,000 step number was actually just from a marketing campaign in like the 1960s. And it's a nice round number. It sounds great. You can hit it, but studies have shown that once you hit that 7,000 to 8,000 mark, your risk of long-term health issues plummets. And then once you hit something like 10,000 and above, it doesn't make much more of a dent. So really that number past 7,000 to 8,000 is going to be more for your own personal reasons besides your long-term health. So she talks about this idea of it doesn't burn anything. So she's obviously basically saying, because I'm so small compared to someone a foot taller than me, I use way less energy on that walk than that person does. And that is true. And that's normal. Like if we just kind of think about it super basically, a smaller being takes less energy to maintain than a larger being. And that's for everything. That's with your energy expenditure, that's with your energy intake. You know, a lot of times the complaint around petite women that I see is like, oh my gosh, well, I can't eat nearly as much as my husband who's double my size. And it's like, well, yeah, he's got a lot bigger things to maintain than you. And that doesn't mean, though, that you need to eat super low calorie. It just means that you're eating to support your needs. And to those people, I typically recommend taking a look at where your issue is. Like, is the issue that you're always hungry? Is the issue that you want to eat more fun foods that, you know, they're eating instead of you? So I think in those situations, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of hunger cues, in terms of satiety, in terms of making sure we're hitting our micronutrients as well, getting enough fiber in our diet. But to just compare and be like, yeah, I'm 110 pounds and someone who's 210 pounds gets to eat more than me. Yeah, that's just how like life works. I don't know what to tell you. And people always use that as an excuse of like, oh, well, yeah, petites have to train and eat completely different than everybody else. It's like, well, no, because also this 210 pound person can't eat the same as someone who's 610 pounds. Like it works in all directions. So anyway, that was kind of a tangent. I think there was one more point here. No, that was it. Let's look at the third post. Ooh, she's a lengthy one. Let's see how my reading comprehension is. 4'11" female, 100 pounds, wants to lose fat and maintain. Oh, I can't turn it sideways because it cuts off. Oh God, okay. It's because, hold on, I'll show you. It's like cutting off on the side because of my camera. Hold please. I can do this. I'm gonna screenshot it, zoom in. Hell yeah, I'm a genius, guys. Okay, as a 4'11" female with an emotional eating problem and ADHD, I can say it's incredibly difficult to control my weight. I'd like to be where I was a year ago, 85 pounds. I've been very small most of my adult and child life, and I have a small frame and structure, but I'm 26 now and my eating habits have gotten pretty bad. I developed an emotional eating problem and struggled with yo-yo dieting. I have an issue with mindlessly eating or night eating and have been trying to fix it, but when I do, the weight comes back or more. I'd like to maintain my weight, but at my height and age, I have no clue if that's possible, even if my habits completely stop. I'm not working at the moment, but I try to get at least 10,000 steps in and I run for 30 minutes every day. I know that when you're really short and you have excess fat, it can be really hard to lose that. I can't afford a gym membership at the moment, so I don't really know what else to do other than cardio, but I was recommended resistance training. Can anyone give me some advice on what I can do for workouts? I'm also struggling to know when to eat and how much. It seems like if I eat 1,200 and run, I'm fine, but after a while, I start gaining. If I go a little higher, I start to rapidly gain. I will take any advice. I also should mention that my diet is mostly protein and veggies and some carbs. I can't eat gluten, seeds, or nuts, and I don't eat dairy and meat. Having an emotional eating problem, though I've been eating really whatever I want for a really long time, and it's messed up my GI. I'll take any recommended advice on what to eat and when and how, because I basically feel like I'm also struggling to balance hormones. Okay, there's a lot of things there. First and foremost, there's a lot of talk of dealing with behavioral patterns based off of things that are a little disordered in first glance. So for that, I would highly recommend working with a registered dietitian. If you can find someone who specifically works with someone with ADHD, because obviously a lot of working with an RD is going to be habit building, but people with ADHD have to form habits differently. I would highly recommend that. But just for educational purposes, let's break down a few points here. This person is 100 pounds at 4'11", and their goal weight is 85 pounds. More than likely, for an adult, that is not healthy or sustainable. You can make every excuse in the book of small frame or this or that, but being a full-grown adult of someone who's only 2 inches shorter than me and having a goal weight of nearly 40 pounds less than me is not, And I'm gonna question then, do you have any muscle mass? How's your bone density? You know what I mean? Like, we're not just talking about fat mass here. We're talking about everything as a whole. And to be that low weight, you have to be frail at that height and at that age, which I'm assuming this is an adult. So she goes on to talk about emotional eating and yo-yo dieting. And honestly, this is what happens a lot when you restrict. This was me in my 20s, eating as low calorie as possible and then getting fed up with it after, 2 or 3 weeks and having a binge session because my body was starving. And this is why I highly recommend working with a professional. We've kind of already covered the 10,000 steps a day and the running 30 minutes daily. That's incredible. That is way more than the average person, or at least American, gets daily. And resistance training was recommended to her. Absolutely, yes. You're going to build some nice lean muscle mass, which is going to support your hormonal health, which she says at the end she thinks she has issues with. It's going to improve your bone density. And unfortunately for her and her mindset right now, it could absolutely lead to a weight gain, but that weight gain is going to come from bone and it's going to come from muscle mass. But this is, again, why I would recommend for her working with a registered dietitian or a professional or even maybe a therapist to get through some of those mental blocks. 1,200 calories a day, we've already discussed this. Messed up GI and struggling to balance hormones. Whenever someone asks this, I'm always like, are you sure? Like, did you actually go to see an endocrinologist? Did you go to see a doctor? Did you get, some panels done? Because right now, and for the last 2 years, gut health and hormonal imbalances, that's been trendy because a lot of snake oil salesmen and influencers are just trying to sell bullshit to you and make some money off of your insecurities. So I'm not saying that those things don't exist. Those are absolutely real, and everyone has a very different and unique gut microbiome, but you need to go see a doctor to figure that out. And I think that's it. So what are some takeaways that we can take away? Just because you are a petite person, however you want to define that, whether it's height, whether it's frame, it does not necessarily mean that you have to train or eat or live your life drastically different from any other person. I think that the less we can keep comparing ourselves to each other and the more we can focus on what I need, what are my habits, what are the things I'm doing day to day to support my long-term health, that's going to be way more helpful. So if you have any questions about this, please let me know down in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and I will see you all in the next one.